Welcome to our next edition of our Holy Week lessons, and this week, or this time, you get a cooking show. We're going to be having our family Seder dinner tonight, and I really regret that we're not being able to have our church-wide Seder dinner. We have really enjoyed those in the last few years, but you can continue to have your Seder dinner right there in your home. You can have taken just one part of the Seder dinner or the whole thing. If you'd like some more information on that, we have some scripts and some instructions on how to do Seder dinners at your house, and just let me know and I'll be happy to get that to you. Now right now we're going to be starting on a dish called choroset. Now choroset's a traditional fruit salad that has been used for generations and generations and generations. Now the recipe for choroset, it kind of gets mixed up over time just because there's just as many different recipes for how to make it as there are different types of people in the world. There's a lot of different types of Jews and Christians, and they're all just a little bit different, and that's really, I think, some of the beauty of choroset. I have right here, this is the choroset recipe that we use in our home, and I try to make very similar as we come together as a church. Now, when we get to this meal, now if you don't really know what Seder is, not everybody knows that name, the Seder dinner is the traditional dinner celebrated at Passover. Now, Jesus and his disciples were actually coming to celebrate Passover when they were in Jerusalem during Holy Week. They weren't there to celebrate Easter. At least they didn't think they were. And as they came together for their Seder dinner, they probably had something at least similar to what we're going to be having here today. Now, when we as Christians come together and celebrate the Lord's Supper, we're actually using two of the elements or the ingredients in the Seder plate. One of them is bread or unleavened bread. We should have flatbread in our house. And then wine, which we like to use grape juice. A little easier on the children that way. But we do have that here on the table, and we will be having communion on Sunday, even in our services, even though we're at home with each other. Quentin, didn't you have a question about the communion?
Yes, I did. Yes. Daddy, I know the bread is Jesus' body and the wine is Jesus' blood, but why do we eat choroset?
Why do we eat choroset? Well, it's just another symbolic part of the meal. Just like we do understand the body and the wine. The choroset was representing something from back in Exodus chapter 5. When the Israelites were living in slavery in Egypt, they had to make bricks. Have you ever made bricks? Yeah, me either, but I know how to make bricks. You take things like mud and straw and sand, and you pack them together into these square shapes, and then you bake them. And that was part of their job, and it was hard work. It was probably not as fun as making mud pies, but that's what they did, is they made bricks, and it was hard and it was heavy, and it was a really, really hard life. Would you like to spend the rest of your life making bricks for somebody else? Yeah, probably me either. Slavery is a rough, well, it was a real burden life. Well, Lily knows. Lily, what was it like when you were a slave?
You mean like when you made us cut those grapes into fourths when they're already this small?
Yeah, I really made you have to do it. You like eating the grapes, though, don't you? How many of the grapes did you eat while you were cutting them? Yeah, that's what I thought. So, basically what we have when we're making our choroset is... traditionally, it is made with apples and dates and grapes, figs, a lot of dried fruits like raisins and figs. But we usually use fresh stuff because what we got, and also nuts and wine and honey. So what we've got right here is Lily's pulling in some diced apples. Okay, we like these. These are Honeycrisp apples. That's our new favorite. And then here is some quartered or cut into fourths grapes. And then the next, what's that one, Lily?
Pear.
Pears. Oh, I like the pears. And then Lily's personal favorite in it? Plums. All right, so we have plums. One last thing here we're putting in today, and this is chopped up pecans. You can use any kind of nut that you have. We found the pecans marinate real well. I never thought about them as something that would get wet. But we marinate all this in together with a mixture of grape juice and honey and just a little bit of cinnamon. All right, now I'm going to take a spoon, and we're just going to work that. If you'll notice down at the bottom, you see how the grape juice and the honey are just kind of puddling at the bottom of the bowl. Now I have to take the grape juice and heat it up on the stove so that the honey will mix into it real thin, okay? Then what we do is we sit there and stir it and let it get covered, and then I put it in the fridge and let it sit for a little while. After an hour or two, or even more than that if you can, overnight it works real good. If you'll just keep coming back and stirring it, all of that honey and grape juice will get in all of the different fruits, and it turns out to be an absolutely deliciously sweet dish. All right. Now, choroset, like I said, it represented the time of slavery that the Israel was going through and the burden of that. But we don't really spend a life in too much slavery. Probably the worst thing is having to do chores. But slavery in our life, as we look into the New Testament, we see that sin can be a slavery. Colin, can you tell me why you think sin is called slavery in the Bible?
Mainly because it's a slippery slope that you're just doing it, and slowly you're living for the sin instead of with the sin.
Right, so you can get started, maybe you didn't even want to sin, and you just slowly get involved in something, and before you know it, you're doing a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until it starts dictating your life. And we see people in addictions and people that are deep in sin that's totally destroying their life, like someone that is enslaved to a master. These people are enslaved to their own bad choices. But Jesus gave us freedom from that in the sense that we can be forgiven. Not only can we be forgiven for the consequence of sin, which is death, but we can be forgiven and even brought to freedom from our sin and live a life that is, I'm not going to say free that you'll never sin again, but you can be pulled out of those times that are really enslaving your life and destroying them. Today, as we get to have our choroset, you're supposed to take a few minutes and remember what it was like to be a slave to sin. Now, I know that y'all haven't been enslaved all that long, but yet at the same time, you can remember when there was a sin you really wanted to get away from. You can remember when you had done things and you really, really wanted to be forgiven. And that's the remorse of knowing that in the morning, that knowing that you did sin is made sweet by the fact that Jesus died and forgave you for it. And when you taste the choroset, that sweetness is the sweetness of grace. So Nate, would you end our lesson in prayer?
I sure can. Lord, I thank you for this time we have to gather together, Lord, around the table as a family for Seder. Lord, I thank you that you give us freedom from our sin, just like you freed the Israelites from the Egyptians. Lord, I thank you for all the many ways you've blessed us. And Lord, I thank you for this sweet, sweet choroset that Mike made us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We look forward to talking to you one more time tomorrow as we get together for Good Friday. And we will see you then.